Hello, my name is Renee Kuhn. This is my husband Gary and our precious daughter Charisma. As you know, Ralph, Charisma is enrolled in Oregon's In-Home Comprehensive Services program and receives 20 hours of paid caregiving support per day. She is dependent on another person for her very life, every moment of every day. We want to welcome you, Ralph, into our home today, where we are going to share with you and the SEMA Verma team our story that we have waited 3 long years to release publicly. At the same time you are viewing this video on my new YouTube channel, Only for the Love of a Child, organizations across the nation who advocate and support children with disabilities are also being sent this video. In addition, local and national news medias and investigative reporters are also being sent a link to this video. The reason for the release of our story at this time is because of the reversal and remand opinion by the State of Oregon Appellate Court last week in our daughter's behalf. We have now come full circle in the evidence that we have obtained over a 3-year period against Oregon DHS and their failed attempt to illegally remove transportation miles from our daughter's plan when visiting family. We are ready to release the evidence, the unbelievable audio evidence, where Charisma's caseworker of 9 years, Susan Larson, stated under oath at a hearing in 2014 when she answered my question as to how she knew my daughter's preferences as to community activities, when she stated that she's had many discussions with our nonverbal daughter. I testified at that hearing that I would have given even one time in her 34 years of life to have had even a single discussion with my daughter. The audio recording of this perjurious statement made by Susan Larson in 2014 will now be uploaded to my new YouTube channel very, very soon. In addition, we are exposing DHS for their isolation tactics, for their refusal to grant an exception to the 50-hour cap for our daughter, who clearly qualifies for the exception according to rule, for their refusal to notify in writing all the past and present PSWs of their tax-exempt status under the Difficulty of Care Act before deadline, and the fact that DHS even went so far as to not allow TNT to include a Difficulty of Care tax exemption questionnaire in their employee packets years ago, for the refusal to move all tax-exempt PSWs into a flat rate program similar to other tax-exempt provider programs in Oregon in order to eliminate the unnecessary requirements and burdens upon tax-exempt family homes that other tax-exempt provider programs do not have to be burdened with, such as employer of record, the 50-hour cap, and the incorrect classification of parent PSWs as hourly wage employees. The taxpayers of Oregon are being made aware today that a group of publicly funded hourly wage employees are allowed to drink, have sex, and utilize recreational marijuana, if they choose, on the job while receiving an hourly wage in Oregon. This makes it perfectly clear that parent PSWs should have never been classified as hourly wage employees in the first place. The same as someone working in a group home for an unrelated disabled individual. Over the next few minutes, Ralph, we are going to expose with hard evidence and deep personal story that Oregon cares more about their budget than they do the disabled individuals they are mandated to serve, and that they will stop at nothing to illegally deny or remove services from the disabled individuals they are charged to serve.
Ralph, we are outraged that following our decision by the appellate court on Wednesday, the amount of money that was wasted by the state of Oregon in order to try to defend and continue to say that our daughter did not deserve that transportation benefit. On our end alone, $28,000 was spent on an appellate attorney. All of those dollars will be refunded because the decision was reversed. The fact that that much money was spent and effort to go against us, these are paid state employees, caseworkers, hearings officers, ALJs, all the way up the line. They even had to pay for the appellate court judges, all of their staff to take care of this. I would assume their charges alone, if you looked at hourly, would probably exceed $100,000. This is all a burden on the state taxpayer because Oregon is out of control. They're doing things to people intentionally as they did to us, not withdrawing when they have an opportunity to withdraw. And as a result, those kinds of dollars are spent, let alone the stress on myself, my wife, and our severely disabled daughter. It's an outrage.
The state of Oregon, we believe, is trying to pin the reversal on an erroneous ALJ. And that's not the case, Ralph. We went to hearing in 2014, and we have 5.5 hours of written testimony as well as audio recordings. And long before an ALJ was ever selected for our hearing, or long before we ever got to hearing, I have 3 notification of planned actions that Susan Larson submitted to us. It took 3 notice of planned actions to get it right. All 3 were delayed, and all 3 broke OAR rules regarding the timing and what they were to contain to families that are denied a service benefit. Each one of these 3 notification of planned actions, which were included in my evidence binder in 2014, document for anyone that the word family appears in every single one of these as the reason why the mileage was denied to our daughter. These 3 notification of planned actions are going to be uploaded onto my site, and in order to prevent anyone from 100% blaming the ALJ for the reversal and the remand that was handed down last week.
It's important to realize, Ralph, that this is not about money. The benefit to us was a few $100s. Our income is a 6-figure income. We had no desire to ever have that transportation benefit. It was given to us because there was an error, and Susan Larson had to put it in the plan. It was removed from us behind closed doors without any ISP meeting being convened to steal that dollar or those dollars away from our daughter. Did we need the money for gas? No. Was it a benefit that she was entitled to when it was given to her? Yes. Are we upset that the way in which they removed that benefit without ever having a discussion with us? Absolutely. That is the real issue, not the mileage. It was the way in which the state allowed those caseworkers, that caseworker and her supervisor, to go against us, to team up against us, take that to hearing, take it all the way up to the ALJ, who made his error in his decision, and then us having to fight it to this point 3 years later.
Yes. And the error in the plan was made, I don't know if it was made by Susan Larson or someone behind the scenes, but there was a calculation error in a previous ISP that I caught and asked Susan why one total on one page didn't match the total on another page. And this has all been questioned and testified to in the hearings in 2014. I'm not saying anything that isn't in the written testimony. And so as a way to balance that correction, they offered us a mileage benefit. I testified in 2014, we didn't need it, want it, or desire it. We don't need anyone to pay for our gas to take our daughter anywhere. We never needed anybody's gas mileage prior to being offered a mileage benefit in order to balance some calculation problem. And so that was never the issue. I disclosed our tax returns in 2014. I disclosed how much money we made, and there was absolutely no motivating factor for us to ever drag our daughter to any community event or any outing to visit friends and family so that the state would pay for our mileage.
All documentation on this is available to you, including the full transcript, as well as the audio transcript from the hearing. In addition, we also have any information that you would need from other things that occurred, including the oral arguments, and of course you've seen the order and opinion from the appellate judges.
And even the appellate court mentioned that the caseworker and her supervisor intentionally did not include the word family in her ISP that we refused to sign on February 24th, 2014, which is just what, a couple days away from today?
Yes.
We're almost exactly at the 3-year mark. And Ralph, we've held this story inside of us for 3 very long years. We have been victims. Our husband and I, as well as our daughter, have been victims of a scheme concocted by a supervisor and a caseworker behind closed doors where they disregarded OAR after OAR, and every single OAR that they violated, I have quoted and brought up to the ALJ in that hearing. Is there anything else you want to say?
Nope.
Okay.
Now moving on, we're going to address the 50-hour cap exception that we've been asking for since March. This 50-hour cap has not been granted to our family, and as such, we've had to bring in additional PSWs in order to provide care for our daughter. What that has resulted in is, one, us being forced out of the home during those times when we could be providing care for her. It's also allowed the state to have the ability to isolate her. We're calling it selective isolation because it's isolating her when that care provider is here, since she cannot be transported in her adaptive RV, which is required for her transportation by her doctors. That adaptive RV that she's transported in was actually involved in a federal discrimination case, which we won just in the month of January. That case involved an HOA that tried to remove that RV from the driveway and forced us out of the neighborhood when they said they would take us to court to have that done, although she had the federal right through the Fair Housing Council to have that. As a result of that, the reason that I'm bringing this up is that ruling by a federal judge assured us and assured any HOA in the nation that she has the right to be exclusively transported in that RV for all trips. The state will not recognize that and acknowledge that that is the truth, that she cannot be transported any other way. PSW cannot come and provide transportation for her in a vehicle, and unless the state provides that RV and a trained driver for that, they are isolating her every single hour that they're forcing someone to be in the home taking care of her when we cannot.
And I have been working with Chellis Cronenberg, Ralph, since nearly a year ago. Next month will be a year. I have numerous and numerous emails as evidence of the variety of issues, the begging and the pleading for them to look more closely at regulating our family homes and turning them into group homes by requiring that we cannot care for our daughter as we have done personally for the last 6 years in our family home. And so one night a week, we have to sleep in the motorhome because our care provider has to spend a 24-hour period here because the state chooses to ignore a physician's letter that says that she has a sensitivity to being cared for by others more than 15 hours a week. So in order to fulfill the 34 hours a week that's in question now, we have to make some of those hours overnight for Charisma's benefit, not by our choice. But in order to do that, we have to have somewhere for the care provider to sleep. So she sleeps in our room, and we have to sleep elsewhere. What else did we want to say about that?
When we did not get a resolution from Chellis Cronenberg, we took our concern to a higher level in terms of the Medicaid person in the state of Oregon.
Lori Conyer.
Lori Conyer.
We filed a formal complaint with Lori Conyer.
After a protracted delay and her not getting back to us, we finally received from the Department of Justice. Ellen Mendoza sent us a letter that had numerous errors and problems with that letter in regards to them trying to say Charisma was not entitled to an exception under the 50-hour cap. That letter we responded to, and when we sent that response to Ellen Mendoza, we sent that to her certified mail restricted delivery, meaning it had to be sent to her. A few days later, this envelope was returned to us. In someone's handwriting, it says refused. This was on the eve of her, in her letter, saying, if anything changed, please get in touch with us. We will look at that and consider it. Did she? A refusal by the Department of Justice to even continue talking with us about the right Charisma has to a 50-hour exemption in her plan.
This was the response to the letter that fell significantly short. And Ralph, you've been copied on all of these emails. You've seen the Lori Conyer complaint. You've seen the letter that Ellen Mendoza wrote in response to Ellen. Ellen didn't respond to us. She had the Department of Justice respond to a family, and it fell significantly short. And so when we wanted to respond to that, as she invited us to do, she refused to open the envelope. The other glaring error that's happened in the state of Oregon, Ralph, that we need your help with desperately, is that Chellis Kronberg, Lilia up the chain, everyone now has chosen to ignore physicians' letters. I have given Chellis Kronberg physicians' letters since last March. They have still not acknowledged in an email that they've even received them, because when they receive them, they would have to grant her the 50-hour cap exception. They don't want to acknowledge. Those doctors' letters are detailed. They are specific to how many hours that Charisma can be in the care of other people. They are specific as to her need for adaptive transportation. They are specific that she's being isolated and that she's regressing medically and behaviorally because of the 50-hour cap being imposed upon not a group home, but our family home.
We have made a hearing request of the state through our county caseworker that we go to hearing on this case. Not for the 50-hour cap, but for the isolation that is being caused by her not having an exception to that cap, forcing us out of the home, forcing us to have other PSWs in the home, and that was filed a week and a half or two ago, and we have not yet received notice of that hearing, but we intend to take that to hearing to hear that issue, especially based on the most recent letter from the DOJ, where it was clearly spelled out in the information that they included that exceptions were available to people under certain conditions. Our daughter meets those conditions.
Yes. And Ralph, another thing that they're choosing to ignore, Charisma's ISP, her RIT, her PCI, and her ANA, all clearly document, not by one caseworker, but by two caseworkers, Charisma's legal need for adaptive transportation.
The only other thing regarding that issue is the absurdity of the way in which the state has it set up for PSWs in a in-home comp program. We must have an employer of record, and they call them a common law employer. That employer is charged with actually training PSWs, selecting PSWs, recruiting PSWs to come into our home. These are not people, for the most part, the ones that I know of as employers have any training, background, education, or even knowledge of the disabled. It's simply a way for the state to have someone in a capacity that signs our pay or our timesheets. These individuals are expected to do a great deal more without any compensation whatsoever. It's a travesty in the way in which it's set up. We cannot believe it was ever approved by anyone, that the stakeholders or anyone else thought that it was a great idea. The reason it's not such a great idea is that it puts an undue burden on the families to relate to this employer. And in fact, in the rule, it even allows that employer to dismiss PSWs. So if that were the case, that all of a sudden they felt that we were being in a situation that wasn't breaking any rules, but they didn't like us for some reason, they have the power to dismiss both of us and put Charisma into someone else's care, which harkens back to the institutionalization of individuals against their own will.
And the original reason for an employer of record, which we're not arguing with whatsoever, is that someone not related or not living in the home should sign timesheets. That's the way it was. And when Susan Larson, however many years ago that was now, was our caseworker, she was the first one to tell us, just choose a family, a friend, or a neighbor who's willing to sign timesheets. And we said, oh, okay, that's fine. And that would be perfectly fine to ask someone to do and not expect compensation. Then all of a sudden, out of the blue, here's all these OARs regulating the employer of record. And none of us were even notified until it was already passed, and even then we weren't notified of the OARs as to what that really meant. And the people that we all selected, that all of our previous caseworkers had told us what the role was, no longer fit that role. They aren't disabled trained. Our employer of record lives out on a 100-acre farm in Silverton. And he is, how old is JR?
JR's in his early 70s, and he was a retired steel worker. He is not trained in dealing with the disabled. He just happens to have been a friend who could fulfill that role.
Yes, and was willing to do that, and he does such an excellent job. He's so sharp and such a professional guy, takes this role very seriously, and then all of a sudden OERs are put in there that he can't fulfill. And so now we are stuck with trying to figure out how we're going to resolve this. But the bigger question is how did DHS get these OARs approved and put into law here when the people who approve this, whether they went through the legislature or the stakeholders or whoever, they don't know the other side of DHS, the harm that they intentionally cause families, and how they make them spend $28,000 to prove that an individual has the right to use a mileage benefit and visit their friends and family.
The next issue we want to address is the difficulty of care tax exemption. As you are, I'm sure, aware, individuals who provide services within their own home and are related have their tax or are tax exempt status and have their income exempt due to the Difficulty of Care Act. That was enacted in 2014, retroactive to 2013. We found out about it about 3 months ago. The only reason we found out about it is the new payroll provider, PP&L, was in their packet, included page 23, which indicated that we were possibly eligible if we met 3 criteria. We were aghast. We were flabbergasted. The reason why is because that had been in existence since early January 2014, and the state failed to ever let any of us know, including my wife and I, that we were tax exempt. The TNT, which was the company at the time, continued to take taxes out of our checks, taking that money away from us that we could have used for our daughter's benefit and our benefit, and just realized as of late when we were made aware of this that we could file amended tax returns, which we have done for the federal government as well as the state. Those federal returns actually equal a 6-figure amount because of that money that was withheld from us.
And I have begged and pleaded with the state of Oregon, Ralph, since we discovered this, to send out a letter to all PSWs, past and present, so that they can be notified of this, so that they can recoup the money that was inappropriately withheld from them, knowingly withheld by the state of Oregon. There's a deadline fast approaching for anyone who worked in this capacity, who's eligible for the tax-exempt status. There's a deadline coming soon for the 2013 tax year. And we begged and pleaded in writing numerous times, and I have all that communication for anyone who wants to see it. And as recent as the DOJ's letter 2 weeks ago, they flat stated in writing, which will also be uploaded on my YouTube channel, that they do not hold any responsibility for assisting PSWs in paying or avoiding taxes. That statement right there told us so much.
It was evident at that point that they really don't care about individuals. They don't care about our budget, and that they are withholding that from people is something that obviously is not illegal because it came down from the DOJ, but it's questionable. It's in our minds unfair, and if those people that have not become aware and file those amended tax returns lose that money, I'm sure it will become a legal issue for damages.
Yes, and the first thing that we did upon realizing that we, by reading the PP&L questionnaire, 3 simple questions on page 23, the first thing I did the following morning is I picked up the telephone and I called TNT and spoke to Chris. And I said, Chris, we just learned we're tax exempt. And the law says it goes back to 2014. How come we didn't have this questionnaire in our employee packets? We filled out numerous employee packets when employers would change or this would change. We all had to redo our packets. And he said, well, we've had many discussions with the state of Oregon over the years, and they never provided us the okay to calculate your checks correctly or include a questionnaire so we knew who it was who could qualify. And the next thing I did was I picked up the phone and I called PP&L. And I said, we've just learned that we're tax exempt. And Oregon never let us know. Why did they not include this page in their employee packet? And Jasmine in the Arizona office told me because the state of Oregon did not tell them to do it.
In conclusion, Ralph, we've covered the reversal and the remanding, so we will have to be going back into another hearing with another ALJ. to finally sort this out. We have the ruling from the appellate court that they cannot remove miles from our daughter to visit family, and that the ALJ was erroneous in doing so. But we are being forced to go back in to settle this, to finalize it, and have an ALJ make a decision on how many of those 779 miles we're entitled to, based on the evidence that we present, which will include the evidence we presented at the first hearing, and in addition, evidence from the appeal decision that says that you cannot selectively remove a family from a plan, and you cannot say that if someone else might be there with her, such as my wife or I, that we may benefit from that you can deny that because someone else is receiving an incidental benefit. The other thing is the 50-hour cap. We have no real concern in terms of going to hearing on that issue alone, but on the isolation of our daughter, we have requested a hearing. We hope that that is granted. If it is not, we will retool, rework, and apply for another hearing based on evidence that the DOJ has provided for us regarding our eligibility for that exemption. And then with the difficulty of care. Personally, we are fine with what has happened because we are able to get all of our money back. But we're not fine with all the other poor individuals in this state that were never informed. The individuals that are still in-home comp providers, those whose loved one no longer lives with them, may be deceased, may have been given up for foster care or other reasons, that may never see that money. We are asking that someone, whether it be your office or someone else, demand that the state inform people of that tax exemption for those who qualify. And finally, what we're really asking of you, Ralph, and we're praying that you will take action to have the state immediately, in an emergency waiver, remove the 50-hour cap exemption from all in-home comp providers until that time in which a flat rate is established and people can be put under that flat rate. To continue to have people be abused and neglected as we are is ridiculous. The amount of time that it takes, the energy that it takes, the impact on our daughter, the cost in both time, energy, etc., is outrageous. The state of Oregon DHS has numerous employees that all they do is investigate abuse and neglect. Who is investigating the abuse and neglect? The parents and the disabled, who appear, as our daughter does, to be extremely well cared for, but in truth, they are providing a detriment to her care by continuing not to provide an exemption that will allow her to be transported and not be isolated. Who investigates that? Please, we're asking that you find a way to make an immediate exception so that individuals in the in-home comp program are not bound by that until the state can come up with a new program, or if Medicaid has the power to establish that program and override the state, it be done as soon as possible.
Yes. Thank you, Ralph. Any measures that you can take regarding the flow of Medicaid funds to the state of Oregon, fund them through another agency, or halt them altogether. We are fighting not just for our daughter, but for all people like her in the state of Oregon. Our daughter will always be fine. We always make sure that her needs are met. But our battle is for the people who can't speak, who don't have the resources, who don't have another parent in the home helping them assist. They don't have the time, energy, or resources to fight. And as you can see, $28,000 in counting. We haven't even went to the second hearing, but we're ready for it. We're ready for that hearing. And not 1 mile, as I stated in 2014, not one of those miles was ever for our benefit, that we drug our daughter along without any benefit to her whatsoever, just so we could have someone pay for our gas to get there. Well, now they're going to be paying for the diesel in her adaptive transportation RV. And we're going to say exactly what we did in the first hearing, only now we have an appellate court ruling to say that anyone who isn't incidentally benefits from a trip that we take her on where it's for her benefit, all those miles will be paid and reimbursed to her. Thank you, Ralph, for listening.
Thank you, Ralph. It's a sad state of affairs in this state when a family such as us has to have a legal fund in the tens of thousands, if not close to $100,000, to defend and go against the state to get the benefits that they're entitled to, as we just proved with the reversal and remand. It is a terrible situation here that needs to be remedied, and we ask for your help. Thank you.